Oui, allô, bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à une autre édition du SimplyPodLogical, un podcast du SimplyPodLogical.
Can you translate that, please, sir?
Yeah, je fromage, tu fromage,
Oh my
il
God,
fromage, nous
okay.
fromageons, vous
Welcome
fromagez,
back,
il
everyone,
fromage.
to another episode of SimplyPodLogical, a simply analogical podcast.
Very special episode.
Yes, it's very special because we're giving you an ultimatum. Listen to this full episode or don't, and you will suffer the consequences.
Is it an ultimatum if there's no consequences?
Yeah, maybe not. That's not how that works.
Consequence is you won't have a good time.
If you
That
don't
sounded like a
it.
threat. I just mean you just won't get to hear something you might enjoy.
Yes. Well, happy Taco Tuesday, everyone. Welcome on in. Today, we wanted to discuss a TV show that actually came out like 10 months ago. It's called The Ultimatum on Netflix. That was the American version. Mm-hmm. And there was recently one also on Netflix called Ultimatum, which is the French version. Mm-hmm. And it was filmed in France. And we watched it with subtitles, but it kind of reminded us of this show and the discussions we just had between us about it. So we thought, well, let's make a podcast on it because we just have so much to say and we both found it so interesting.
People love when we talk about marriage too.
Yeah, so do you want to explain the plot?
Yeah, so the American edition and the France edition were just a very similar format, or the same format, really. You have like 6, 7, 8 couples, and all the couples have one thing in common, that one person in the relationship wants to get married and the other doesn't. So the person who wants to get married is giving their partner an ultimatum, saying, I'm not going to stay in this relationship if we don't get married. So the reality show is, for 3 weeks, I think, they basically do a trial relationship with a different partner, like another person from one of the other couples there. Like they get paired up. Mm-hmm. They have 3 weeks of basically what it would be like to live with a different partner. And then once that experience is over, they go back and live with their actual partner for another 3 weeks. And then at the end of that period...
It's just for a couple of days, I think.
Oh, is it just a few days?
Yeah, or like
I thought it was
it's
more
like
time.
Shortened.
Anyway,
Anyways,
and at the end of that experience, they get together with a bunch of cameras in their face, and they have to decide whether or not they're going to get married or not.
Right. But it's always one person in the relationship who's issuing the ultimatum, the person who wants to get married. And then the other person is like hesitant, not ready, doesn't want to get married, whatever the reason is. So the show is framed as always like one person wants it, the other doesn't. Fight. I mean, like, that's basically, you know, the reality show.
If they both wanted it, there wouldn't be a show.
There wouldn't be a show, exactly. So you need more drama, you need conflict. That's what makes good television. Right, Ben? So I just also want to note that the U.S. version was hosted by Vanessa and Nick Lachey, who also hosted Love is Blind.
They do, yeah.
Right. So this is their like second iteration of love-based reality television shows. They can't get enough of them,
I guess.
It appears.
Well, keep getting that check, I guess.
The France version didn't have a host.
It was just a TV screen speaking at them.
It was just like a narrator who just randomly spoke. Like they just couldn't find someone.
Yeah.
And I also
Where's the French Nick Lachey?
Yeah, that
he
doesn't
Who would
exist.
be French Nick Lachey?
The people, when they were like listening to the host, they were just like this. like the contestants were like, it was this
They should have gotten
host.
like Michael Bublé or something.
Is he French?
French Canadian?
I don't think that's what they were going for. This was very like
I just think
France,
Michael Bublé
French.
would be a good reality TV host, I think.
He would.
He kind of gives that like, I don't know, he's charming. He's probably a scumbag. Don't you? He's one of those. Don't you think Michael Bublé is?
Don't say that.
Well, I don't know
nice
him.
Guy. I don't
he
know.
looks like the kind of guy who seems really nice, and your mom would love him, but he's actually a scumbag.
Right. That's not generalizing at all.
That's the vibe I get.
Okay. All right. Well, good thing he wasn't a host because the contestants might have wanted to marry him.
Yeah, he is cute.
Sure. Yes. But I just wanted to add that the television show is called The Ultimatum or L'Ultimatum, but the subtitle is, what was the English one? The French one was On se marie ou c'est fini, which translates to we're getting married or we're done. Like we're finished.
The English one was something very
The
similar.
English one was like basically the same, but the way that one reads in French, like c'est fini. To say that in French is like it's fucking done. Basically,
Yeah.
it's like the energy.
Also, I would kind of think of this reality show under the umbrella of a lot of reality shows where couples show up somewhere. Usually it's an island, and they give them opportunities to fool around with other people to like see if they will cheat on their partner.
It's a social experiment.
Yeah, but it seems like this is like its own subgenre of reality TV. Take a couple that has conflict and see if they will cheat on their partner.
This
is one big
yeah.
aspect of the show, especially the American one, I think.
So it's like Temptation Island and Wife Swap. That's what the Ultimatum is kind of like. But the point of the show isn't to swap partners. The point is to force someone into marriage, basically. I think that's the point. Or break up. It's one or the other. But in doing that, they have people swap partners just to add a little more like juice to the show.
So yeah, so the cynical read is that you get paired with someone else to see if you will cheat on your partner. But I guess in the show, their sort of logic is that I guess by being with some stranger for the next 3 weeks, you'll figure out if you actually really wanted to be with and marry the person you showed up with. Do you think that's, do you agree with that, first of all? And then do you think, is there any sort of logic to that?
I think the priority is reality television drama.
Yeah.
I think the logic that the hosts or the showmakers are trying to pass off is like, oh, you know, if you're with someone else, you might appreciate what you don't have because you always miss something that you're, you know, that you'll realize it through dating this fake dating this person for 3 weeks.
But if you love your experimental 3-week stranger and you realize, oh, like, I don't even really like my girlfriend.
Then you've also had growth, I guess.
Yeah.
Like they kind of...
To me, that's the only thing that experiment can do. It can't tell you that, oh, yeah, I do want to marry my partner, as much as it can tell you, like, oh, there are other people I guess I just haven't dated yet who are way more compatible for me.
So, and that would prove that you weren't ready for marriage. And the fact that that was even a consideration in your relationship, if all it took was just hanging out with a stranger for 3 weeks, meant like maybe marriage like wasn't really on the agenda in the first place and shouldn't have been.
Yeah. So on the American show, I want to say a lot of the Ultimatum, yes, it's about marriage, but I thought a lot of the subtext, or not even subtext, right? It was pretty explicit that a lot of the women were saying, we need to get married because I want to have children. I thought a big difference on the French one was that these people were pretty young. They were all young, right?
So, yeah, let's talk about that. Like, who was on the show and what types of people were issuing this ultimatum and which ones were like, and who was receiving them?
Yeah, because on the French show, like, the main thing something that stood out to me right away was how young the people were. And they weren't saying, I need to get married because I'm ready to pump out a bunch of babies. They were just saying, like, it is important to me to get married, or it's important to my family to get married.
Yeah, I did notice some cultural differences, which I found really interesting as well. On average, I'd say the contestants on the US show were like a couple years older than the ones on the France show.
Right.
But one thing that was pretty universal across both shows was that the person issuing the ultimatum was more likely the woman. And in both shows, it was hetero relationships, just to be clear. That's who was on the show. But it was usually the woman saying, I want to get married. I brought my boyfriend here because he won't propose. And I'm hoping this show will make him propose at the end of it. That being said, there was always like one or two couples where the roles were reversed. And it was usually something like, I think on the US one, there was a guy who wanted to start a family, but she wasn't ready. And then on the France one, there was a guy who wanted to move to the US to start like his music career. And he was issuing the ultimatum to his girlfriend because he wanted to move to the US, marry me, come to the US with me. And she was like, I would like to stay in France. I hate the United States.
Yeah, she had a life and a career there. Yeah.
There was some like US hate undertone in their storyline, which I found really interesting. I wanted to hear more. Like they were making fun, her friends were making fun of the idea of picturing her in LA.
The funny thing for that guy wanted to move to LA to start his music career. And throughout the series, he just like starts singing. And he's like really not good at singing.
I thought he was good.
Really?
I mean, like, okay, he's French, like very French, and then he
Oh,
sings in English.
Is that how French
and
people
it
sing?
sounds like brilliant, like it's good because you just don't expect it, I guess.
Oh, I thought it was really bad.
Okay,
You thought he was
I
a good
thought he was
singer?
pretty good. Okay, well,
I thought that was the funniest part of the show.
oh,
He's like, I'm gonna move to LA, baby. It's living out my dream, and then he starts singing, and it's just really,
I don't
really
think it was
mediocre.
bad. I don't think that's fair. I thought it
Oh,
was
you're
more.
too nice.
I thought it was more funny to watch the girl. Her friends were like making fun of like LA bitches. Basically, that's what they were saying. They're like, we hate America. And I wanted to understand like what their position was on like America and culture. They didn't really get into it.
Oh, French people hate America for their freedom.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's why we don't eat French fries. We eat freedom fries.
Okay, right. Who's we? We don't go there. we eat
We're
poutine,
the
Ben.
royal, we Americans.
But I was like, they should come to Canada because we speak French here.
Yeah, they should. Well, but he wants to be a musician.
So she's going to LA. Okay, well, I wish him good luck.
Uh-huh.
I do. Okay, sorry. We got a little bit derailed. So one other thing that was common amongst the people who weren't sure about whether or not they were ready to get married was that a lot of them cited that they weren't financially ready to, which is fair because a lot of them were in their young to mid late 20s. And a lot of them said like, I just feel like I'm not ready there. This was often the guy saying, I don't feel like we're financially there. I'm not ready to support a family or pay for the wedding. And there was at least one girl who was like, that's not an excuse. I don't care. You need to like figure out your money situation so you can support me. Remember there was one girl who was like, did not care. It was like really dismissive of this very real concern for two people starting a relationship and investing in whatever it is they're going to do with the rest of their lives.
Well, it depends if she just wants to go to a courthouse and get married and they're both comfortable with that. I do not think I need to save up more money is an excuse, right? But if it's like, I want to throw a lavish party for 200 people, blow all your life savings on that, then that's super unreasonable. I think sometimes men use it as let's assume you even care about marriage.
Okay.
Maybe you just use it as an excuse to say, oh, I'm not ready. I'm not settled enough in my career, blah, blah, blah. Because to me, that's not like an excuse for not being committed to your relationship. And if getting married is the ultimate expression being committed to your relationship, I don't think it should depend on some like end state you think you need to get to before you want to get married.
Yeah, because you can get married for no money. But that's not the vibe I got from the women on the show.
Because a lot of these people seem to want to get married because of the status or the what it symbolizes, rather than just being like, this is an expression of our commitment to each other. That's the vibe I got anyway.
Yeah, well, we could talk about that, like why people want to get married, both in real life out here in reality.
Why do people want to get married?
Why do people want to get married? So first of all, disclosure, in case you're like a newer listener, Ben and I have talked about this at great lengths on one of our very early episodes of this podcast. We call it like why he won't propose or something.
It's like the most viewed clip.
Yeah, because people are so infatuated with the idea of marriage. Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's something that people do obsess over. And to hear that there's a couple out there who aren't getting married and they're firm in that choice really surprises people, because most people out there can't relate. They don't understand, because we've all grown up, or most of us have grown up in a world where if it's not religion or your parents, it's just socialization.
It's Disney movies.
It's Disney movies.
It's growing up watching.
It's watching Say Yes to the Dress on TLC. It's seeing all your friends get married. It's just the thing that you do, I guess. And if you don't do it, you experience shame by others in society. And I'm not saying everyone around me is a terrible person and shaming me. That's not true. Although the internet is another story. but like, yeah, and I see that. Full of terrible people. Here's the thing. Reality check is marriage is supposed to be about the people who are in it. And so I don't think anyone should feel like they have to get married because of people outside of that marriage. If two people are interested in the symbolism, the ceremony, the meaning of it, the experience, if two people want to do that, then that's great. But the second other people are like chirping in your, you better get married, you better do it faster, why haven't you done it yet? All of that is not good for me. And I mean, we'll get back to this about like the problems on the show, but that's kind of our stance on getting married. And personally, we just have not really cared. Like, like with respect, I just don't give a shit. Like, if I had to summarize it.
Respectfully.
Now, I would like to break down, though, that there are two buckets of reasons why people get married, and I think it's important to acknowledge both of them. Sorry, do you have something to say first?
No, I agree with everything
Yeah.
you said. Just, yeah, I feel the same way. And like, we know people who've gotten married. And if it's meaningful to you, I think it's a beautiful thing. So I don't like the idea that we're out here saying like we're
not
not
anti-marriage.
anti-marriage,
But I'm anti-forcing someone
I'm just
to
sort
marry.
of like agnostic to it. Like it's not
Yeah.
meaningful to me and it's not meaningful to you. But like, let's say we were in a relationship where like I just didn't care, but you really wanted to get married. I would
You
just
might do it.
we would just get
Yeah.
married and I'd be fine with it. Like it doesn't mean anything to me. And if we kind of go back to the show, that's my biggest observation with the show. I'll just put this on the table and you can make of it what you will, is that it's not just like unreasonable people trying to force their partner to be okay with marriage. To me, the biggest issue with the show is we saw a lot of examples of just people not being empathetic to their partner, whether it was their reservations or reluctance to get married or their desire to get married. I think it kind of worked in both directions in a few instances.
Right.
And it just seemed to me like there wasn't a lot of maturity or good communication in these relationships, even sort of about whether how things were meaningful to them in that way. So it's not just a bad people want to get married, that's bad pressuring partner thing. It's like a few of the people there didn't seem to really like care or like marriage wasn't meaningful to them. It's like, well, then what is the reason to be reluctant about it then? I guess there are some like legal and like practical reasons to consider, but it just seemed to me like there was a lot of just signs of not a healthy relationship in both directions when there's such a conflict over people not just seeing what is meaningful to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, there was definitely more communication needed. I also, again, just reinforced, like, a lot of them were so young.
Yeah.
A lot, like, there's like a 22-year-old who's like, we need to get married now. And it's like they've been dating for 2 years.
So, yeah.
Like, I don't know.
So where
man.
does that come from?
I don't know. Because what is this, 1927? Like, I don't understand why people so young are so obsessed with getting married to me. And let me just make clear, because this is going to be different depending on your religion, and there's different regional circumstances
Like you
as
can't
well.
live with a partner.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that's the case in what we were watching on these shows. That did not appear to me, or at least it wasn't communicated, that it was like they're really religious and they're not allowed to kiss someone until they're married. I don't think that's what it is.
One of the couples on the French edition of the show said she could not live with a man until they were married.
So you're right. There was one girl on the French show, but none on the American
And
show.
her family was very influential to her in basically saying you cannot keep seeing this guy if he's not prepared to propose to you.
All right. So
So that was the
family
closest thing we had
influence.
to this like sort of like family tradition aspect of it's just improper to be in a serious relationship with a man without having a ring or a wedding to go along with it. It's funny you mentioned the 1920s thing because like I think the sort of like broader sociological point here is like it used to be super normal for people to get married and have kids at very young ages, right? But that's when we lived in like a world where maybe you grew up in a small town and like your dad was a farmer and you knew you were going to be a farmer and your life was like very, very not global. I feel like there's so much more fluidity to the kind of identities people can have and choose. Like, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but like there was just a lot of more certainty to life for a lot of people like 80 years ago, let's say. So I think it made more sense that people just because there was like a more clearer direction to who you were or what you were going to do in your 20s, it kind of made sense that people were more established in their sort of family or professional life at a young age. That's like completely uprooted now and not at all the case in a modern context, right? So it totally makes sense that people are waiting longer and longer to get married and have kids, and if they want to have kids at all. More and more people aren't having kids. But I'm just saying, like, seeing a show with a bunch of people in their early 20s so fixated on like marriage to me felt like really old fashioned and kind of like a throwback to like a completely different time that I didn't really recognize.
So this was one of my discussion points or questions that I had towards the
All right,
end
you
of
wrote it.
this was like,
Okay.
does it reinforce our archaic ideals of marriage? But like, let's table that because I think it's more of a conclusion. But I totally see where your mind is going with that. I did just want to go back to kind of the two baskets of reasons for why people get married, because then I think we can tie it back to the show too.
There's only two reasons
No,
people get
not
married.
two reasons, two baskets of
Baskets of
reasons.
reasons.
Yeah, do you
Okay.
remember? Like baskets of indicators. Okay, never mind.
Okay. One basket
Okay.
has eggs.
No,
The
so
other.
one basket is like practical administrative reasons that a lot of people relate to. And if that was a reason that applied to us, we would have been married.
Yeah.
And so by that I mean like tax reasons, citizenship reasons, immigration, insurance
Insurance, yeah.
reasons, and that kind of thing, where a lot of people get married for, you know, it like gives them a tax benefit or it's easier to stay in the country and like whatever, because that makes sense to me. Where we live in our context, there is no real upside. There's common law where we live, which is basically like this treated almost, not exactly, but almost the same as married. But it just recognizes that you live together, and then your taxes are slightly different than if you are single on a government form.
Yeah, it's more nuanced than that, but
Yeah.
in our very particular circumstance, there's no, it would not change anything that would help us in a practical way.
Yeah, there are differences. There's going to be people who are like, I work as a lawyer in family law in Ontario, and there are differences. There are small
For sure.
differences, but none that are different enough to change anything.
Right. All sorts of weird things when it comes to like family and estate law and like end of life
Yeah.
or who automatically gets your house, things like
But
that.
you can set all those the way you want just by like having contracts in place still.
Yes.
So you can still make it the situation you want and be common law and not have to get married to make it what you want. Yeah. So
That's one basket.
that's one basket. And the other basket is completely social. And there's all sorts of different reasons in there. So religion, for a long time, although it's decreasing, people got married for religious reasons, like you can't live someone, like you were just saying on the show. There was one couple where I think that was the case. And there's parental pressure, and that's just kind of a generational influence that over time is going to fade, as it kind of already has, with less and less people getting married, less people feeling pressure by their parents. But like our parents, for example, were pressured into marriage by their parents, but that's kind of over time going to fade out. And then there's just more generally, even in a modern context, just social status. So this idea that we've all grown up with, you know, being sold this idea that marriage, it means you're happy in the relationship. Marriage means there's commitment, and also being a little girl fantasizing about your wedding day. You get to be treated like a princess for a day. And all these things are like a ring has literally become a piece of fancy jewelry that people do show off. What started as I guess like a token of like, she is mine, wear this and it will identify you as mine, became more of like an accessory that people would wear and get excited for. People want to go ring shopping. They want to show it off to their friends. And I think just like a little bit more building on that is just this idea of people seeing marriage as some kind of like a milestone or a check mark or an achievement in their life, to be able to say like, we're getting married, check. Okay, next we're going to have children. I'm going to check that milestone. And there are people who, religious or not, will say like, I want to get married and then have kids. That used to be like for religious reasons, but now it's just, you know, the order of things that we're all kind of just told this is the order you need to live your life in. And there's a lot of people who don't live their life in that order or don't follow that at all, but it is something that you can't deny. We've all kind of grown up being told this is the way you should aim to lay out your life.
Yeah, and I think people are less and less beholden to like these sort of like expectations in a lot of contexts anyway. The family thing is interesting because like for a lot of the history of marriage was like a very transactional thing of like families getting together and like them marrying their children as, you know, an indication of some sort of alliance between their families.
But it's like passing it on. That's why the father walks the daughter down the aisle.
Yeah,
It's
it was
I'm
like
passing it on.
yeah, to see like the people getting married didn't even have the choice. It was just like the father of the two families, right? In a very sort of patriarchal, toxic way. I think it's a more modern idea that marriage is a representation of like intimate love between two people choosing to make that bond or association. And again, what I'll come back to is like what you sort of described in that sort of last grouping of reasons to get married. Like if that's what it means to you, like there's nothing bad about that. That's totally fine. And like even I'm not going to speak for you, but even for me, the label of it, I find it awkward sometimes. Like as much as I'm confident in like how committed we are and like it's okay that we're not married, like there's no issue there. If let's say I'm just talking to someone, like a stranger even, it's weird to just refer to you as my girlfriend.
But why? This is what I find so interesting. Like from if we're writing a second year social paper right now, deconstruct that for a second.
Because
why is it so weird to say my partner?
Because I'm just practically thinking, I'm just thinking they're thinking of it like, oh, that's some girl I just like I'm sleeping with for a couple months or something. Or I've just been...
That's what they would think? Why would they think that if you said my partner?
No, I didn't say partner. I said girlfriend. Girlfriend seems like a bit of a juvenile term.
Yes.
Partner is like in certain contexts, like what are you talking about? Like a business partner? Or are you talking about like... Because like honestly, there are contexts where it's like not even clear you're talking about a romantic partner. And I'm not going to go like, oh, that's my romantic partner.
But it depends on the context. Like if you say, if you're at the garden store and you're getting soil and you're like, oh, my partner really likes roses, so we'll get this soil for roses.
So how do they know
think you're talking about your business partner?
Maybe.
No, they wouldn't. It's the context.
What if I'm at a store and I go, oh, my partner loves to shop here? How they don't know what I'm talking about?
You're probably not talking about your business partner. You would just say like my coworker at that point. If you were trying to talk about someone you work with, you'd be like, my coworker loves this tea or something.
My co-relation.
But like,
there's got to be.
Can I propose something?
Okay, propose.
I remember.
You're gonna propose? What are you proposing?
Ben. Okay, I remember 10 years ago, something like that. Was it 10 years? Okay, I was in grad school.
Were we dating?
I think so.
We just started dating 10 years ago.
This isn't about you, this story.
Oh, okay.
I'm just remembering. I remember I had a prof and she had a partner and she would always refer to him by saying my partner, and then say his name. But for a while there was students who didn't know who her partner was, like, because they never seen him, right? I knew who he was because I just remember. But she would say my partner this and that. And this was during a time where when you said the word my partner, people assumed you were gay. Because that was a word 10 years ago used to, because like she couldn't say like it was her boyfriend, but she was 37 years old. So you're not saying boyfriend when you're, almost 40 years old. So she just said partner. But she was also, a sociology prof who was like, fuck everyone and norms. I'm going to use the word partner. Why do you assume and you associate that with the fact that like I'm a lesbian? Like that's on you, So she was very progressive in her thinking, like partner can mean anyone. And so she would, I think, use that in class sometimes to kind of like, I don't know if she was trying to teach a lesson, but I used to think about it and I really respected that about her for using that. But now you can say partner and like it not automatically be associated with they mean someone of the same gender.
Yeah, I was going to say like it's never really occurred to me or bothered me as maybe the better thing to say. Like that's if I use the word partner, I don't care that someone might assume that means I'm referring to a guy. For me, it is. Yeah.
That's the point. Like who cares?
I don't care. Yeah. For me, it is more just the partner in some context is like weirdly ambiguous that is not necessarily referring to your life partner.
But does it really matter?
And girlfriend to me it just I think some people interpret that in a way that makes it sound like less serious. And sometimes you want the heaviness. You want the significance of being like I hire a guy to do some work on a house and I don't think he did a very good job. I'm going to be like, my wife's not going to be very happy about this. That doesn't work if I say my girlfriend's not going to like this. You know what I mean? There
But
just are a
can
few
I-
social
Can I fight you
contexts
for
where
a
this,
second on
you
this?
can fight me.
Because the example you just gave, I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's an example, but it's kind of that trope of the angry wife.
Yes.
Where the husband gets to blame it on the crazy wife.
Okay,
And I
bad
resent
example.
that.
Yes. Okay, that's a bad example.
Uh-huh.
But there,
Next time, say, my partner's not going to like this.
my business partner is going to
Don't
be
say
writing you
business, like-
an angry legal letter.
I kind of like the ambiguity, like of just saying my partner, and like the person
you?
has to guess. They have to guess. Like, are they talking about same
just
same
like-
gender?
you like
are they
people
talking about
guessing?
business partner? Like, what the fuck are they talking about? Whatever.
You like just confusing people.
Yeah.
I think there should be a word that is somewhere between girlfriend and wife.
My common law partner.
Yeah, no one's going to go around saying that.
If you want to be the most accurate, Ben, you better say common law partner.
There are times I just refer to you as my wife. Does that bother you?
That's, I mean, I don't really care enough to be angry, but I think I'm more interested in how socially you've just decided that that is the most appropriate term to label me so that other people understand our relationship.
Yeah.
And in a way, I feel a little bit sad that the world has just decided the most committed and clear partners or people who are together should be husband and wife.
Yeah, but I just think it's a realistic recognition that other people see that distinction as meaningful, even if we don't. So if I'm like trying to put both our names on an account, I think by referring
But they're
to
not
you,
the same name.
I know it's not the same name, but like I just feel like sometimes if I refer to the fact like, oh, my wife is also authorized to make
But you
decisions
can't
on this
write that
account or
legally.
something. Yeah, I know.
Because legally that's not true. So you actually can't use that language on a legal document. Like we would just put common law partners.
Yeah.
So you're just using it in a social context.
Yeah.
Just to talk to apparently the gardener.
The gardener.
Who we don't have. Like I don't even know what.
We do not have a
we do
gardener.
not have
to
a
be
gardener.
clear.
Okay.
I'm not saying this is happening all the time. I occasionally
You
find
have done
myself
it.
in
Okay.
social situations where it's just easier to just refer to you as a wife, just because I'm out of a concern that they just won't recognize the actual meaning of you being a partner or girlfriend meaning more than
Right.
what they might think that means.
So blame society, says Ben. But for my prof, who I always think about this moment, I feel like she was on the right path for kind of like debunking and deconstructing these social understandings of like what is a relationship and what is it
I feel like this is
with labels.
This is the difference between you and I, though, right? Like
I don't want to give in, and you do.
I just don't care.
Yeah.
You said you don't care, but I think you actually do sort of care in the opposite direction. You
I care about the significance of what it means
but
to.
you somewhat resent this sort of societal pressure that there is a difference between being referred to as girlfriend or wife and everything. You really reject it, whereas
Yeah.
I don't care. So to me, if I just think like in a very pragmatic way, I'll just say wife, even though that's not true, just to like smooth over a conversation with someone I don't even care about and may never see again.
I might
you
be a little
kind
annoyed.
of you care
Yeah.
about it, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not like I'm not mad at you. It's just more like a damn society. Like, why
Yeah.
does everything have to be weird? I don't know. Okay, yeah, I'm a little bit like that. All right, why don't we talk about emotional manipulation?
Did that just happen? or-
No. I thought one of the underlying like thesis statements, if we're writing a paper here about this show, was how ultimatums are essentially emotional manipulation in the context that they were presented in the show. Not all ultimatums are bad. There are some that are used in relationships or between families when, like, you know, someone has a history of abuse of some form and the other person needs to issue an ultimatum to say, like, I can't deal with this for my own health and
Are
sanity.
you talking about like intervention?
Yeah, like,
style?
sorry, that's
Okay.
a better word. Intervention style ultimatums do happen and can be guided by therapists, you know, who support it. But the ultimatums in this television show were basically like, if you don't marry me in 3 weeks, if you don't propose, I'm leaving this relationship and you're fucking done to me. So that's not really what, I mean, I'm not a therapist, but I'm just going to take a big guess here and be like, I don't know if that's how they would propose you go about this. I mean, never mind, it's reality.
I mean, they're being
television show.
transparent about their value, right? They value the idea of getting married more than they value what their partner
More than they care
thinks
about the
it.
person.
More than they care about the person. Yeah.
Right. But the receiver of the ultimatum is put in an extremely impossible position because they basically are forced to comply and go along with getting married or defy and lose that person.
But is that person giving you a favor if they're that unreasonable about it? I wouldn't want to be with someone who would approach things in a relationship that way, right?
Except the sad reality is that a lot of people in this television show and maybe in real life, if this is happening, those people aren't going to realize this partner is treating me unfairly and not listening to me, so I'm going to step back. They're not going to see it that way. They're going to be like, I'm so upset at the idea of losing this person that I'm just going to give in and say yes and essentially be bullied into saying yes.
If the ultimatum is about having kids, and I would say this for men or women, I look at it differently, right? Because that is like, you might have a beautiful relationship with someone, but one of you wants kids and the other doesn't, and you just say, well, it's too important to me that like I want that in my future, so like this relationship's not going to move forward if like we're just not aligned there. That's a kind of ultimatum that kind of makes sense to me.
Sure, but maybe not like a 3-week timeline, but
Maybe not 3, but these people are showing up to the show
I know.
with this conflict already there.
yeah.
The marriage one is just so stranger to me, but that's just because it doesn't mean much to me, I guess. Though there was one couple on the French show I want to talk about. I mean, this is spoilers, whatever. I don't think anyone cares. So this guy proposes. This was the guy who was saying, giving the ultimatum, saying, I want to get married. Who's the black guy? What was his name on the French show? Can't remember.
Rishi? No.
No, that was the... Anyway, I don't know. There's this guy. So the finale, or the second last episode where they're doing like the proposals, she just is like, I'm scared, like I'm not ready. And he goes,
I remember who you're talking about.
and he's like, okay, so I guess our relationship's over now. And he just storms off.
Yeah, he acted so immature. He basically said, fuck you, fuck this, and walked away.
Yeah. Because like she gave a very eloquent speech before he proposed. It's like, I really love you. I want to be with you.
I want to work on this.
I want to keep working on things with you. There's things about myself I feel like I'm still working on. She's saying she's making all sorts of sense.
She's 25 years old.
And then then he goes, marry me or the relationship's done. And she's like, I'm not ready. He storms off.
No, wait. She tells him she's basically not ready, but loves him. He then gets down on one knee and proposes.
Yeah.
And she's like,
Okay. And then when he storms off, she's very sad. She sees him huffing and puffing around the garden.
Mm-hmm.
And
tripping.
He gets in a car to leave, and she runs to the car and goes, I'm sorry, I just got scared. I'll marry you.
Yeah.
Because she saw that, like, oh, he's crazy enough that he was actually just going to like completely abandon anything we had if I had said no to this decision. So she does say yes. And she says like, oh, I was just scared and freaked out. But really, it was just a very obvious example of her being like, her just, bowing to his will and what's important to him.
And that is exactly what emotional manipulation is, because his behavior during that moment, after she was so real and trying to share where she was, and he just acted like a fucking baby and said, well, fuck you then, takes the ring, stuffs and puffs, stomps it, puts it in his pocket, and makes her cry and break down to the point that he's broken her down literally to give in to his demand, even after she had the courage and strength crying to say, I'm not ready to do this. He guilted her into doing it anyways. Mm-hmm. And that to me is like, just there's emotional manipulation in 5 minutes if literally you just watch that scene. And that is why none of this is healthy. Yeah. If you want to learn how to emotional manipulation, watch Ultimatum, the Ultimatum. Okay, so I think that like no one should propose to anyone unless you have confidence that the other person is gonna want to say yes.
No element of surprise here.
I mean, you could be surprised. Like people are surprised all the time. Like you don't know when or where they're gonna do it.
I could surprise the hell out of you.
Oh my god. Ben, stop emoji. But like, let's be honest, okay? Like I've had friends, my sister's been to like 8 million weddings in the last few years.
We've been to weddings.
Yeah. But the people have discussed that they are interested in being proposed to or getting married, right?
You should have a very good idea.
You should be really like clear on the fact that the person you're going to propose to is excited at the prospect and will say yes. Not that you're saying, I'm not saying ruin the surprise, but like the people on this show, by virtue of like being on this show, you know, one person doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So it's literally
awkward.
That is the casting directive. One person does not want to do this. Let's force them into
Let's see
a
how
situation
they react to an unwanted proposal.
Whether they give in or not.
Yeah. Have you ever seen like sometimes my feed will just have clips of like, have you ever seen someone get proposed to in like public and the person says no? It's one of the most like painfully awkward, cringe things you will ever see, right?
Yeah.
And it always makes you wonder like how they got to that place, how they have taken that chance or done that without sort of having a very good idea of what the outcome will be. Like people who would like propose at like sporting events in front of 20,000 people for the girl to just be like, this is horrifying, and just walk away.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why that kind of content goes viral, because it's everyone's who's watching it is like, oh my god, what's gonna happen?
Yeah. But the opposite goes viral too, right? Like beautiful proposal stories. I find they're very moving. I think sometimes.
Yeah, that's society. That's part of how
But
they've kind of made it so romantic.
This is all some like. You're a little weird.
Is it a conspiracy theory?
I think it is genuinely beautiful when that moment really means something to these people.
Do not misunderstand me. Okay?
I don't think we're misunderstanding.
No, it is beautiful if that's something you aspire to. But I don't think it's beautiful to guilt trip and emotionally manipulate
but that's
people
what we're talking
into
about.
it.
I'm saying
I know.
there can be like a beautiful proposal story, right?
Yes, there can be. Yeah. I don't know.
Just not for you.
Just like I don't like attention. I mean, I know, yes, hi, I'm an influencer saying that, so don't believe me. But like, there's just something that's just not it for me. I did also want to point out that like the opposite of the manipulation technique, where it's the girl who gives up on the idea of being proposed to, also was evident in the show. So even if the person you were proposing to or wanted to propose to said no, it could also be the case that at the end of the day, oftentimes the woman who wanted to be proposed to could decide to drop their ultimatum. So they could say, you know what, like I've decided to withdraw my ultimatum. I just want to be happy with you. And that happened a couple times. But one thing that was interesting is when, the girls would then go chat amongst themselves about how they're doing in their relationships and what they think is going to be the next steps. It's almost like the other girls said to the one who withdrew the ultimatum that like, oh, she gave up. That's too bad. She gave up. She should have stood strong. It should have forced him to, to not let him go, not let him get away with it. And I thought that was interesting because that's also stereotypically this like trope of women who think that if you can't get your man to propose, you're doing something wrong or you're letting him get away with not proposing. And that's just like reinforced in society as well, and is part of why so like women will judge each other for not being engaged to yet. Like, what's he waiting for?
So that judgment's only fair if the guy shares the view that he's not committed to you until he's married. You know what I mean? So if people are aligned on what marriage means and represents, I kind of understand these sort of conversations about like, oh, he wasn't ready to get married, blah, blah, blah. But it's just like, you can be committed to someone without that.
Yeah. Why don't we explain that for a second? Because that's maybe something that we haven't made clear. It's like we've talked about reasons why people get married for practical reasons or social reasons. But there's also this idea of like, getting married equals the ultimate commitment, like legal paperwork aside or whatever, but just like that means I will never choose anyone else ever again, when like, first of all, that's not true. Like people cheat on each other in marriages,
people get divorced,
or common law, people get divorced, like, whatever. So that's not really it, but just this idea that like once you get married, that's it, or it equals commitment. But I don't know what it is that people can't really see the same lens or see relationships that aren't marriage through the same lens. Like they just think that if you're just cohabitating, you're in a common law relationship, or even if you're boyfriend and girlfriend, that it's like not serious. And granted, it may not be serious when you just start dating and you're like 18 years old. Like, I'm not talking about that.
It also is maybe not serious if you get married when you're 22. Like,
yeah.
people can get married in very unserious ways as well.
And people can be committed when they're young and not committed when they're old, right? It doesn't really matter. Although generally, commitment tends to be correlated with not teenage years, because usually people don't settle down with their teenage partner, but
there's no real way though of answering this question of like why marriage isn't important. Like the negative, like there is nothing to say it's the absence of something isn't important or unimportant. It's kind of asking like why you don't believe in God, right? Like, well, I just don't see it. You should explain to me why you do believe in it. I feel like the exact same way with marriage. Like if you have reasons or feelings about why marriage is important to you, I'm happy for you. But just for a lot of people, that just doesn't exist.
yeah, and that's why like we'll get this comment, or at least I will, because I'm the woman. I'll get like, why hasn't Ben proposed a lot from
Do you
like,
still get that?
occasionally. I mean, when I'm
Yeah.
opening fan mail, I know it's like 5 years old, but
Sure.
still like, I mean, maybe not actively today because we've told this story so many times, but before we had the chance and the space to explain this to people on the podcast, which is probably only a year and a half ago, I get it all the time. Like, when will he propose? Why aren't you married? Reminding me.
It's like there's something wrong with
Or-
you that I'm not proposing, or something wrong with me
I
that
don't
I'm
know,
not
one or the
proposing.
other. Or like when Sophia and Tyler got married, all my comments were your turn, your turn. And it's that like amongst the women, they're like get excited and they're like, okay, whose turn is it next, ladies? And even that that practice of throwing the bouquet, that's exactly what that is supposed to be for. Like, who's gonna get married next amongst the ladies?
Did you line up to have you ever been to a wedding with a bouquet throwing? Or you just steer
remember.
clear of the...
I don't participate in social events like that. I'm just kidding.
You just don't leave the house. It's too cold.
I mean, all of this can be fun and lighthearted, which it is, but I think there's just like underlying sociological meaning to a lot of it that I've found, like I've always kind of thought about, I've just been interested in.
I feel like most of the people writing that are not coming from a bad place.
Writing what? Oh, the
Like,
comments.
oh,
yeah.
Are you going to get married, or being excited at the prospect of us
Yeah,
getting
because
married?
they think that it's something we ought to want to do.
Well, maybe it's just something that has a lot of significance and is a real symbol or representation of happiness and the ultimate culmination of a relationship to them, and they just sort of want that for you. I don't think they're necessarily doing it to convey that they don't think we have that by not being married, or maybe they just don't understand it or see it the same way. Like that, you're the one getting the comments, not me, but like that doesn't bother me at all.
Ben, I know. I'm not mad at them for those comments. But it is just a reflection of how a lot of those people, whether they're younger, maybe they're a little bit younger, but it's just a reflection of how people grow up and just like
how they're socialized.
Expect that that's the path that people will take. So no, I don't care. It's not upsetting. It's kind of annoying after like so many years of the same question. But like, you know what I mean? It's just, to me, it's just like painting kind of the underlining of society and how that can just show itself through like random comments on the internet.
Yeah.
So
I just don't think of it all that deeply, I guess.
I guess I think about everything too deeply. I'm just like, how do I analyze this?
It's a you problem.
How do I overanalyze these comments from probably 12-year-olds who just finished watching Say Yes to the Dress? Okay.
Let's sit around thinking about what 12-year-olds think about my relationship.
I am interested though, because I was doing some research the other day about like why, like where did marriage start? Like, and I don't mean globally around the world. I'm just thinking mostly in like a North American kind of context.
Like a more modern civil marriage
Yeah,
context.
civil marriages is kind of where I was thinking. And I did a little bit of research that many decades ago, the government, which kind of regulates marriages now, marriage is regulated by the government or the state or the province. You have to get a marriage certificate from your local state or whatever it is. You can't just get married without the government's permission, basically. Like it's government regulated. And it was initially kind of started as a way to incentivize procreation because they had realized that once people, traditionally a man and a woman got married, they would have children. And that was always good for society, for the workforce, and yada,
Tax
yada.
revenues.
Tax revenues. And the other thing is that if you have a family, you're more likely to be self-sufficient and the government won't have to waste its services on you. If you're just like one person who like lost their family, you're more of a burden on the government system. So the government incentivizing have your own family get married meant that like that's a few less people for them to take care of directly because you're going to take care of your own family. So
this is a very like economic analysis kind of view of marriage.
This is an extremely like cynical, bare bones look at it. I acknowledge
this
that.
Is why Justin Trudeau wants to get you to get married and have pop-up babies so they can generate more value for the economy.
Generate the revenue. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, not underpopulation. Any sort of decrease in a country's population is actually a hugely significant factor for that country's economy.
Yeah, that's why it's kind of been flagged that people have been having less kids, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Got to replace those boomers.
Right. I also think it's important to point out that decades ago, it used to be nearly impossible to get divorced. Like the government literally made it so you got married and that's it. We expect you to be married and like have children now. And there was a time where contraception was banned if you were married, and people had to fight for the right to be able to use contraception in a married couple, which is really fucked up if you think about like that happening today, because that's a show called Handmaid's Tale. Kind of.
Oh.
But yeah, so all of these evolution in marriage, which basically had the people asking for, like this goes against my fundamental rights for you to force me to do any of this. And if I want to divorce someone, I need to be allowed to do it. So it went to the Supreme Court for a whole bunch of things, whether it was allowing contraception or being able to divorce for no fault reasons, like you didn't have to cite infidelity or you didn't have to cite a reason, but like finally people had to literally fight for the right to get divorced.
Sure, but I mean, this is a lot to unpack at the end of the podcast. Like marriage, at least to some extent, offers protections mostly to women in relationships in terms of men just not being able to leave.
Right. Because then
without them getting anything.
When you're married, assuming there's no prenup and assuming historically the man was often the breadwinner, that the woman would be able to retain some of his income for, not necessarily in perpetuity, but like some kind of agreement for alimony because she had his kids, which is usually the story for talking years ago. And then also, obviously, like more recently, people had to fight for the right to be married in same-gender relationships. So I'm just saying marriage, because it's a government-run thing, has evolved so many times because people had to fight over like, hey, government, you're regulating this wrong. Change it so I can be a bit more free to make the choices in who I want to be in a relationship with.
Yeah, people fixated on like the idea of marriage today. Marriage has meant a whole bunch of different things to different people in different contexts and different cultures for a long time.
Yeah.
People used to get married to multiple people. That still happens. Sisters'
not
wives,
legally.
brothers' husbands.
I don't think it's legal.
There's a lot of famous people in history had King Henry had what, 8 wives?
Yeah.
How do you get away with that?
You live in the 18th century or whatever the fuck it was. But did you know there's been like...
And he would go to this gardener and he said, my 8 wives aren't going to be happy about this.
Maybe. I didn't know about this because I was just like looking it up yesterday, but there's like a whole movement to deinstitutionalize marriage and like not have it be run by the state or the government.
Well, it wasn't always. Or like it went from like a very personal thing between families to I think the church becoming involved in registering or recognizing marriages to then becoming more of a
government-wide.
At least in like a Western context, I think.
Yeah, but like what they argue for is domestic partnerships, which is basically a contract between people that you renew every 5 years. Like that's one
comes
proposal.
up for renewal. It has
But like I thought that was so interesting because I'm just like maybe a termination fee.
The term of this relationship is 5 years unless the parties mutually agree to renew.
It's incredibly complex and different voices.
There's something very not romantic about that.
There's that. But like you could say that about government paperwork for marriage too. So like same argument. There's also it's ripe for abuse in some instances if you can just decide without oversight who you want to marry. obviously, like
What's wrong with that?
because like incest and
Oh,
other fucked up
Jesus.
shit.
Why do you
Yeah.
gotta go there?
Well, I'm just saying, like, I could understand how
Two consenting people, adults.
if
You
it's
you
not
could easily put guardrails around that.
but you need the government to put guardrails around it. So that's what
I
I'm
guess
saying.
we're not arguing for a
okay.
libertarian approach to marriage.
I'm not. I didn't really know about this. That like there was a whole kind of argument to deinstitutionalize marriage.
That's interesting.
I just thought it was really interesting, but I'm like not going down this
So wait,
rabbit hole.
do you want to get deinstitutionalized married?
Well, that's not marriage.
That wasn't a proposal. I just mean like
It's called a domestic partnership, which we're already in. Just call me partner.
so we are.
So we're already partners.
We're in an uninstitutional marriage then, I guess.
No, we're in a common law partnership according to the state
Okay.
or the province.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, that's romantic.
It's so romantic. So why don't we go back to one question? We'll use this to wrap it up that you kind of raised earlier about the role of the show in culture. And does the show and this idea of like
I don't think
Ultimatum,
the show is hugely influential on culture.
We're talking about it. The show was filmed like in today's day and age, but does it reinforce archaic ideals of marriage?
Yes.
Supporting
that doesn't mean it's good.
sentences?
That doesn't mean it's good or bad, but it does sort of refer, or in my mind, in my context, it sort of promotes a bit of an anachronistic, old school view of marriage. Yeah.
I thought that it's interesting that in an era where we're supposed to be following this, like, freedom of like my mind, free myself from toxic people. I'm going to do what I want to empower myself, especially in like a women's empowerment kind of logic that's kind of launched in the last 10 years or so. And social media, you see that as well. I thought that like the fact that we're living in that era kind of conflicts with the ultimatum. Because the ultimatum was like the opposite. It's like, let's be toxic, essentially, and emotionally manipulate our partners into doing this thing that they so have clearly said they're not ready to do. And let me just be clear on the show. It's not like all of them said, I'm not getting married. I hate marriage. A lot of them were like, I'm 25. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I need time. So this wasn't like they're totally against marriage necessarily. A lot of them said they're just not ready and they need time.
But there's a countervailing trend in social media. Social media is not all about just like, fourth, fifth wave feminism, whatever wave it's on. It's like there's that countervailing trend of like the trad wife or stay-at-home girlfriends, I don't think it's just completely, you can't paint with such a broad brush that, social media just represents this progressive view of women's independence. There are people who do have more conservative or old school views about marriage, and if that works for them and makes you happy and you're respected and
are treating your partner with the same respect.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a not progressive like progressivism is like the only way to look at relationships either, I guess.
Yeah, no, I didn't say that's how you must analyze relationships. I just meant that I thought it's interesting that like we're supposed to be living in a world where we're not being toxic and we're not treating people with toxicity and to try not to emotionally manipulate our partners.
Sure. So like I understand why that's toxic,
Yeah.
but just the idea of people still having like what we might think are old-fashioned ideas about getting married and having kids and the role of different
It's still very strong.
the performance of gender and things. People just have more conservative views. Some people have more conservative views about that than other people do.
Is that conservative? I don't know. I'm sure some people will argue.
I'm using
that.
conservative
Yeah.
just in the sense of, I mean, by definition,
Traditional.
conservative is just like a reluctance for things to progress
change.
or change, right?
Right.
So I'm not defending this idea of people trying to gatekeep other people from like loving who they want to love or anything
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
no,
That's
it's
not
not
what I'm
that.
saying. But I'm saying I know for some people, I think just them personally having a view of like marriage being important and meaningful to them could be seen as like conservative in and of itself.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And then the last thing I think on the show, in terms of if we just step back a second and we're like, this is a television show that does what, like many other shows? I think they're participating in this economy of profiting off of people's intense desire to just be loved. Because on the show, half the couples are, or sorry, half the person in the couple is like so desperately wanting that proposal, and they see that as an affirmation of love. So the desperation is being exploited. I mean, I'm not saying it's unwilling. Obviously, they signed up for the show, and I understand that. But it's just one example of many shows in recent history and probably the last few decades where you're profiting off of watching people so desperate to be in love, to stay in love, to be confirmed in their love. Yes?
Yeah.
You have no thoughts. I just also
Well, I
think
mean,
that's interesting.
Yes, and shows social media is I don't think the people making the show are doing it out of a place of like wanting to help these couples resolve their relationship issues.
You don't think Nick and Vanessa want to help? They want to. She was so eager to like have people get engaged.
Maybe
She's
they
like,
do. They seem genuinely interested, but I'm just saying, yeah, like we know what we're watching here. We're watching. You want to see the person who's a little unhinged and bizarre, or the guy who thinks he can sing and can't sing, or you're watching for the conflict or the potential of adultery. Like, people don't have like good intentions watching shows like this.
Yeah. And the people on the show didn't need to be on the show. They all should have just like went to therapy. Like that's, if they were looking out for their best interests, like they would have just done that. However, some of them I see now are doing sponsorships on Instagram. So maybe they fooled us and maybe they never cared about marriage. Maybe there was no ultimatum at all. And maybe they went on a reality television show.
This show more than any other reality show I've ever seen, it was incredibly obvious that a few of them were just there to elevate some sort of profile they could have maybe on social media.
Yeah.
Because in the US one in particular, there's like in the first or second episode, before they even do the experiment of living with someone else, two of the couples just very bizarrely decided not to go through with it and just commit to their partner and, give in to the person giving the ultimatum, I guess. And it was done in such a bizarre kind of like theatrical way that it seemed to me that those people went to the show just knowing that they might do that. Maybe they'd be on reality TV for an episode or two, get like 5 minutes of fame or whatever.
Just to plug
it really seemed like that's all that was. Because
the number one thing that I think people, including like BuzzFeed articles, will do after a season like this airs is, where are they now? So
where are they now?
Well, I'll tell you. No.
Do you know where they are?
I did look some of them up, but not all of them. I don't really have like an accounting list, although although Wikipedia does do that. Wikipedia literally says like status at the end of the show, status now, and they like try and update it to follow these people. It's crazy.
It's kind of like The Bachelor, right? Like how many of those couples make it?
Yeah, it's like a cohort analysis, like per season, like where are they now?
Yeah, but like I don't want to hear like a narrative of every person that's ever been on a reality show. I just like the
high level
the summary of like this many of them did not stay in that relationship.
So I don't have the statistics for you, but some of them went on to have a couple children from the first season because there's been enough time. Others are like recently married, and that's all they've posted on social media. There's been no updates. They literally just posted their wedding, and then that's it. They disappeared. Others are like influencers, so maybe I won't name the brands.
Fib Fat Fun.
There's things like that, or other skincare, and this. Yeah, so some of them are definitely doing that, or like fast fashion brands. There's one of the girls from the first season who that's her whole profile. And then the French ones, they all made an Instagram just for their personality on the show. It's like their name and then like underscore Ultimatum FR or something. Like they didn't want their personal Instagrams.
Oh, maybe Netflix owns those accounts.
Maybe they do.
Maybe that's part of the contract. We get to exploit your
likeness
on social media.
So that's kind of crazy. I'm a little confused how that works.
Can I propose a spin-off?
Yeah,
Who cares about marriage? What if the ultimatum was just about like a real issue they're having in their relationship?
Oh.
Like my boyfriend won't stop eating hummus. I need him to know it's me or the hummus. And the reality show is about if he can change in 3 weeks and stop eating hummus.
I kind of like that.
You like that?
But it should have been my partner. My partner won't stop making hummus.
Okay.
The kitchen smells like fucking garlic and chickpeas and tahini, and it's too much. I have migraines. I can't deal with it anymore.
The smell of garlic gives you a headache?
It's just all the time. Like, I love garlic, but
What are you, a
you're making me
fucking
hate it.
vampire?
Maybe I'm quite pale.
All right, Simply. That was a pretty long one.
That was a good one, though. I feel like I have way more to say.
You have a lot of thoughts on this. I'm sorry I'm not as passionate as you are about not getting married.
It's not that. It's anything that requires like a reflection on how did we decide this was just like life or the way we are to treat symbols or subjects in society. Anything that's like, how did we even fucking decide this? I'm very interested in deconstructing. That's all. But, respect to all who are willingly doing what they want in their life. And I hope that that's the takeaway point is don't be fucking toxic. Be respectful. And if two people are equally interested in getting married, then that's great for them. Yeah.
Yeah, or not.
Or not. Like, or if you don't, you could be like, you could be partners. All right. So we did want to tell our audience just a quick little something, right?
Did we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, we were gonna. I'm tired. I'm giving Cristine an ultimatum.
Oh no.
We would like to take a little bit of time off from the podcast, just a little bit.
Just like a month. Yeah.
Maybe just for the rest of February. We won't have new episodes, and we'll come back in March.
Yeah. Don't worry. Everyone calm down. It's okay. We're still committed to you. We're not leaving you. We just like
this is our trial period. This is our trial separation.
We're gonna start another podcast for a month.
We're gonna see how unhappy we are without you listening in our lives.
Right. That's not what it is.
That is what it is.
Sure, yes. I think for us, it's just like we've been doing this podcast independently, by the way, which means we don't have a production company or a manager or anyone telling us what to do or when to do it.
139 episodes.
It's been 139 episodes, basically straight, with only the odd week or two here or there that we just took off. But generally speaking, we've been here every fucking week for almost 2 years. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So we
didn't really plan for it. Most people are smart enough to say take a break once in a while.
I think the difference is because we have no management or anyone giving us direction. We just thought, well, okay, let's just do this every week. But if you talk to anyone who does podcasts professionally or is funded by whatever, they do it in seasons, and they strategically will do X episodes is a season, and then there's a break, and then X episodes is season 2, and that's because they have to get renewed every season. So there's some logic. They got to renew their domestic partnership. But
what?
I think, well, that's why, because
some
they got to cut it
podcasts
off.
are seasonal, but then others are just weekly, but then they just take breaks sometimes.
Sure.
They have staff that they need to give vacations and stuff.
Yeah, but because we are the staff and there's no one renewing us because we renew ourselves, we never structured it in a way that was more kind of season-like. So we're going to just take the next month off and then come back, and we'll just call it a season. So it's
we're going to call it season 2?
Okay, so season 1 was 2 years long.
So we're renewed for season 2.
Yeah, I've decided, corporate has decided, but yeah, I hope you guys can understand that it's really just a function of us not having done that when we probably should have started that from the get-go, just decided to segment it that way, and maybe there's a month off a year or whatever it is that would make sense for us. But you will still find us everywhere else you can normally find us. I stream on Simply Not Logical, my second YouTube channel. I stream twice a week on Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, and Wednesdays we do gaming at 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm there for several hours, and Ben also streams.
Yeah, you can find me.
Great plug on Bentendo. He does Hummus Mondays.
I wanted to work for it.
And Casual Fridays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. So he already streams twice a week, as do I. So you can find us in our babbling conversations. You can find us there. And you can also listen to a stream without watching it. For those audio listeners who just don't looking at things, you can put on streams on YouTube and just listen to them. I don't know if you know that, but
you can shut your eyes too.
Shut up.
Like, what do we say?
I don't know what I
Explaining to
mean.
people how they can experience
I don't think
things.
people realize that. They're
Oh,
like,
okay.
because sometimes people feel when there's a video, they feel like they're forced to look at it. But like I'm telling you, do not look at me.
Not everyone has to love these different formats. That's fine.
That's not what I'm saying.
But I'm just saying, I know there's some people that are like, oh, I don't like streams. And like, that's fine. You don't need to tell me that. You can just not watch them.
No, they have to tell you that, man. All right.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Stay subscribed. Unless you don't want to see more episodes, then you should unsubscribe. But you probably do, so you should subscribe.
Yeah, you guys should stick around. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. And we look forward to coming back with some other ideas. I know we already want to do The Last of Us because by the time we come back, it'll be concluding the TV show.
I think so. Or close, anyway. I don't
Something
know.
like that. I feel like the timing, we'll try and make it work out.
Could do a Last of Us TV episode, yeah.
The Last of Us will be the first of
review?
us back. Or something like that.
The First of Us.
First of podcast. But second season.
Why don't we, like, change the room?
What?
What if we change the room? Painted
Why?
all the walls pink or something?
It's not my brand. Whose brand is that?
I don't
What? Then we'll turn into like a drama gossip podcast and just talk shit. In a pink
Could just do
room.
that. That'd be way easier.
It would be. That is how people have successful podcasts. Actually, I've noticed that. One thing that makes podcasts way more highly viewed and gives them a lot to talk about is just talking about whatever drama is happening. That's a trick.
Is it a trick or a strategy?
It's a strategy. Maybe let's not do that.
Okay. I'm gonna go eat some hummus now.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic Taco Tuesday. And we'll see y'all in a few Tuesdays from now.
It's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal. Okay, thanks so much for watching. We'll see y'all
Bye.
later. Bye.